Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Chris, and welcome to Enlightened Espresso. As usual, I'm here with Master Chung. Mm-hmm. Welcome. How are you today?
Very good.
Very good? You're starting off with a big smile. I like it.
Because I don't know, it is the morning good, or the evening good, or the afternoon good. But it looks like every time it's good.
It is what it should be, right?
Right.
On YouTube, you can watch whenever you like, so I thought I would include everybody.
Okay.
You're an inclusive guy, aren't you? So we want to start today, just jumping right in. You talk a lot about being alone and the importance of being alone in spiritual growth, but as we've talked, relationships are also important. Can you talk about the importance of relationships from a Buddhist perspective, how we should look at those in our lives?
This is a very, very interesting topic because as a young monk, I was trained just to focus on myself. But then as I grew up in the monastery, I was taught to care for other people around me, to care for the people in the monastery, because the monastery is all monks, but care for the lay people. And then as going now into the world, having my own temple, you probably remember in Long Beach Monastery, I have to care for the disciples, students, and strangers everywhere. But it's progression of growth, and actually in our cognitive development, we actually have that kind of growth. You remember when we was young, we cannot think about anything else. We think about our mother only. The mother is the center of our cognition, because we don't see anything else. Everything else is come from mother. But slowly we grow out of it, and we start to discern, okay, this stuff is not me, but before that, everything is me, with the center. But we see that all this stuff is not me, it was so separate. But we cannot, it takes another few years to develop our cognitive ability to switch roles. To switch roles meaning we start to see people from their perspectives, not our perspective. But if I look at the cup, I can't see from the cup look at me. I can't. I don't know how to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So I interact with people. I only see people. I don't know what people think about me. Mm-hmm. So we grow a little bit further. Then we start to realize that, oh, he has this feeling. Oh, she has that feeling. And this is how she feels about me. So it takes what we call the shifting of role.
Putting yourself in others' shoes.
Yeah.
Empathy.
But that is purely the cognitive function, is the changing, the shifting of roles. Just purely later in our cognitive development, it's not like, you're born 5 years old, you can do that right away. It takes a few years down the line. And so same thing in our relationship. Sometimes we haven't grown to that. You look at your 6, 7 years old kid, sometimes he plays by himself. He's not going to care about whatever. You tell him, okay, come here to eat, but he doesn't. And in Buddhist practice, we see that too. See a lot of monks and nuns that educators, we know that they are really practicing their own. They're not going to practice because they want to save others. No, they don't. They just simply practice their own first. The path lead to that, slowly lead to what the path we call arahat. And so relationships come a little bit later in maturity.
For the audience, the arahat, that's a spiritual growth more internally alone.
More internally and dealing with oneself, yes, and not to dedicate the effort to relationships. They don't care about relationships. They care about how they grow beyond the relationship and get to nirvana, a term that describes that they're completely free from the rest. They off the grid. They have no need to worry about the world or society. They don't need to worry about their mom, their dad, and their relatives. So that's a different path. It's a path of salvation, but also the path maybe sometimes we call the ultimate emancipation. That word tells us that it's not about the liberation of every living beings, just for oneself. You emancipate, you just get out and off. And so you see that relationships doesn't come right away. We're not aware of it right away. Even there, but we are not aware of it right away. It takes a few years down the line in our cognitive development, and therefore the ability to shift roles, to see from people's eyes, to really put yourself in others' shoes, that is a huge thing. It's not like, okay, everyone can do it. Sometimes psychologically we don't develop to that point, and you start to see that in relationship, people fighting. For example, we call teenage A mom or teenage A dad. They fought because they not be aware of each other emotions, how the other's feelings. They just want to express their own feeling, but they don't have patience to listen, and they kind of shift role, right? So it's very scientific in one way, but in Buddhist studies, we also be so much aware of that. Sometimes you visualize something, it completely, from that point of view, you see the lotus, but can you see from the lotus back to you, right? And so to do that, sometimes we need to have, say, 2 lotuses or 4 lotuses come together, and from the point of view of the lotus, we look at ourselves. Sometimes we make the lotus become many lotus. Why? So we start to have the perspective when you send the lotus to someone. And because you are a lotus, you go to people's heart, and therefore you look back and you say, oh yes, this is how people feel about me. And so nowadays, we start to understand that a lot of relationships seem to be broken down. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Across the globe, even in my country, Vietnam, the country that I went to lectures and service, Taiwan, China, and so on and so forth, I can see that these fabrics seem to be a little bit broken.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes too broken, because number one, we don't have the education to teach people to learn how to look from the other person's perspective, how to feel, we call empathy, how to feel the other feelings.
So, and I see the importance of relationships and developing empathy, putting yourselves in their shoes.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about the importance of relationships in spiritual growth, because let's say, going alone and being comfortable by oneself is a really important journey. But also we're social creatures,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So what's the best way from a Buddhist perspective to look at relationships?
So when we, as a Buddhist, the reason why we call spirituality, because you sit and you meditate, you close your eyes, and closing your eye, you develop what we call the vertical spirituality. You just simply going straight, going through the darkness, and you open up to the light of yourselves. So most of the time, you do it on your own. You close your eye and you meditate on your own. That's a very alone path. You're not sharing that with anybody else. But in the other way around, you open your eyes, and suddenly the paradigm shift. You try to see people, you try to interact with people. And when you interact with people, you have to care for their feelings. You have to understand their emotion, their intentions. You have to understand why they approach you this way or why they say that way. Suddenly, the whole paradigm shift. And so, a lot of people think, okay, spirituality meaning you just sit and meditate. But our definition of spirituality is the complete integration of the vertical and horizontal. Horizontal meaning relationship. So relationship always one of the very spiritual dimension itself. Mm-hmm. And to make it spiritual, we have to spend time to understand others' feelings, to empathize, and to listen, and to absorb that feeling into our heart. And especially when people have suffering, agony, grief, we'll be able to take them in and go through us. And we call compassion, meaning you feel the feeling, but you also be able to absorb that. As you absorb, the vertical spirituality will naturally have the power to transform what's inside. But you need to bring them in first. So the ability to open the hands and say, okay, I am able to listen to your suffering. That is huge, and that is very spiritual. Because most of the time we say, oh yeah, I must just close my meditate, forget about the world. That's only half of the equation.
And you're telling, so it's interesting because we talk so much about meditation and going inside, and that's very much
Only one vertical
right
line.
up. But you're saying as you build relationships and feel empathy, you're absorbing some of their
Yes, the sufferings. Yeah.
their suffering, and that brings you up as well.
Of course. So we bring whatever the agony, the suffering of people, you take them in. You see that part of you. You bring them in. And where does it go? It's going down. You're going down where?
Toward the darkness, toward
darkness.
Earth. Okay.
We have to utilize that darkness. Use it as nutrients so we can go vertically. So it's a whole development of a teaching how we don't deny anything. But the story hasn't ended yet. You had a vertical line, you had a horizontal line, like the roots going down to all the trees. But not the ending yet. We had to get the spiral. Spiral is to integrate the horizontal. We call
Spiral up.
Yes, right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
The compassion. We need to have that compassion, and we need to have the spiritual direct above us, the vertical, and then we need to spiral them up, bring the two things together. So it goes like this one here, it is this, and this, and this, and this. So every stage of our development, relationship always at the very forefront.
So let's say,
And that's a very interesting about, because the very integrated Buddhism. Otherwise, people go to the mountain all the time. They say, okay, bye.
it's an inward and an outward path.
Exactly. That's a very good way to say it. But the way that you're so integrated that we allow people to have family, no longer just celibacy, like the monks or the nuns, but we allow people, and we think that is a very natural way, the relationship. It is how you build a relationship. And to build it, we have the menu, and that is compassion, there's kindness, empathy.
What is the other person? So let's say I'm feeling pain, and you're absorbing that pain and taking it in. It's helping your spiritual growth in some way. How is it helping me? Like what is the benefit to you absorbing
very
that
good.
for me?
First of all, it is our urge when we have pain that we be truthful and sharing that. If you're not honest enough, you're not truthful enough, you
It's
don't want
cathartic.
people. Yes, and it's very important that we all have this vulnerability, right? So be able to open up and say, yeah, I'm in pain. Please help me. That's the very first step. And when you do that, suddenly you connect with whoever that is. You feel trusted. You can confide. Okay, I'm in pain now. I'm in confusion, deep confusion. Please help me. So calling for help, it actually, for us, is very spiritual, because that's telling us that, hey, you're a human being. You are part of us. We are a forest. We're not a tree. So, but by saying whatever inside of you, express them clearly, that already get you out of the first stage of pain.
You mentioned that connectedness too, and I know we want to talk about that, because you talk about how we're all connected in relationships, and internal, external, upwards, horizontally. We'll talk about that more in future episodes, so thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate the time.